Sue. Oh, I'm blinded by the radiance. Good morning. Thursday was the official start of summer, but do you know how you really know that it's summer? No tie, no suit. Well, my name is Larry Perlman, and on behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you all to a safe place, a place that honors the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. Believe it or not, we are not here to convert you to anything. Rather, we're here not to convert, but to encourage you to find your own path to a life of integrity, compassion, and love. What a better world this would be if everyone knew we don't have to think alike to love alike. For those who are new, please take note of our mission statement. It's on the front. In fact, if you've been here for 20 years, you might want to take note of our mission statement on the front. And also the 8 principles which we encourage each other to live out, and those are on the back of your order of service. I'd like to welcome our visitors today. So if this is your first time here or second time, or you haven't been here in a while, we'd love to say howdy and welcome. And we'd ask you to just state your name and where you're from, and we'll start over here this week. Any visitors on this side? Stand if you're willing and able.
Yeah, my name's Julian, originally from Swananoa, but we just moved back to the area.
Good job.
Welcome.
Hey.
I'm Rebecca, I'm visiting from New York City.
Ah, are you related to anybody?
I am related to this.
Oh, I thought I saw a family resemblance.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm originally from Miami, but I've been here about 8 years.
Welcome.
Hey. Thanks for coming. Anyone else on this side?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have anybody on this side?
Hey, I'm Fiona. I'm from Marion.
Thank you. Welcome. Took the drive up. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Sadoff, and I'm originally from Charlotte, and now living in Swananoa.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Welcome. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you.
Anyone else on either side? Okay, well, thank you very much. You know, there's a lot of things you could be doing today, and so we're very grateful that you chose to be with us. Thank you for coming. If you're interested in learning more about us, you might find in front of the pew or back in the room this little white card that invites you to fill it out, and we'll send you our weekly newsletter just to let you know what we're doing. You can also ask any member of our membership committee, and they conveniently have an orange tag on like that. And for those visiting, boy, did you pick a good day, because this is our potluck Sunday. And don't feel bad if you didn't bring any food. It's okay. We always have plenty. So you can look for our membership people during the potluck and chat with them a little bit. Announcements. We have 2 ways of doing announcements. One is in our weekly newsletter, which we call The Current. And the other is there's a bulletin board just as you go out that door on the right, which you'll see we have announcements not only of what's happening here, but also what's happening in the community. One thing I would like to give a special call out to today, although I don't see her here, which is amazing, must be out of town or something. Anyway, I'd like to give special thanks to Rochelle Broom. She is finishing up 3 years on the board, the last 2 as the president of the board, and she has worked tirelessly for this congregation, not only in that role, but many others. So we feel she's brought discretion, professionalism, and just a great sense of humor to everything that she does. So we wish her well, as hopefully she finds more time to spend gardening, cooking, preserving, and less time with agendas. So I would say let's give her a big round of applause, but she's not here. Let's see her. It's our practice to acknowledge that the land that we currently are on was not always ours to call home. This land originally was of the Cherokee and other indigenous peoples, and it was their stewardship, understanding, and conservation. Through that, they survived and they continue to thrive in this land. We acknowledge their enduring connection to their homeland. And with that, we'll let our service begin.
Good morning, everybody. I want to also give a shout out to Jim Carillon, and I know there were some people here yesterday who kind of straightened up everything around the Memorial Garden. If you were here, raise your hand. Yeah, so we appreciate you for doing that. Thank you. Our opening words this morning are from Unitarian Universalist Maureen Killeran. She writes, as we weather winds of change, may we have wisdom to cherish the moments of stillness. As we recollect times of challenge and pain, may we remember also the graceful blessings of our lives. As we look to future unknowns, may we have the boldness to trust that there is unimagined good yet to come. Please rise as you are willing and able, and join in singing our opening hymn this morning, number 207. Earth was given as a garden. Our responsive reading is number 654 in the back of the gray hymnal. We'll read it responsively. In Passion Clay. Deep in ourselves resides the religious impulse.
Out of the passions of our clay it arises.
We have religion when we stop deluding ourselves that we are self-sufficient, self-sustaining, or self-derived.
We have religion when we hold some hope beyond the present, some self-respect beyond our failures.
We have religion when our hearts are capable of leaping up at beauty, when our nerves are edged by some dream in the heart.
We have religion when we have an abiding gratitude for all we have received.
We have religion when we look upon people with all their failings and still find in them good. When we look beyond people to the grandeur in nature and to the purpose in our own heart.
We have religion when we have done all our can, and then in confidence we trust ourselves to the life that is larger than ourselves.
Okay. if that will be achieved. This is the time in the service when we invite you to come and share a joy or concern. The stones are up here, the candles are there. So please take the time. The floor is now yours. Does anyone need me to bring this to them? The stone is for you. For those of you who, for whatever reason, did not want to come up, just know that we keep you in our hearts and in our minds. This meditation is called Hard to Be Human. So please center yourselves in the way you deem most fit, and we will have our time of quiet afterwards. In the warm embrace of this community, we come to reckon who we are and how we are doing in the living of our lives. In this time of introspection and reflection, we acknowledge our faults and celebrate our virtues together. If we are honest with ourselves, we know how hard it is to be human, how very difficult to be all we wish to be. Often we do what we ought not, and what we do not do, we do anyway. Here we admit the impossibility of living the completely good life. Here we determine, despite all the odds, to at least try. May what we are speak more loudly than what we say. May our very being craft a silent sermon that needs no words. May we maintain and cherish our integrity in the struggle to be good and to do it rightly. Let our inner and outer person be as one, our doing flow as a fountain from our being. Let us have faith that if the soul is pure, the hands will do it rightly. Let us risk being for others and forgive ourselves when we cannot. Let neither reward nor punishment, neither mythical fear of hell nor lure of heaven distract us from our earthly tasks. Let us, knowing how hard it is to be human, nevertheless resolve here and now to be a little kinder than necessary. And so while our minds are one for this brief moment, I leave you with the eloquence of silence. and so it is. It's now time to collect this morning's offering. Please rise as you are willing and able and join in singing hymn 298, Wake Now My Senses. 298. We'll do all, it's a long one, but we'll muddle through. Please be seated. It doesn't take much to really trigger me to, period. But Let's get that out of there. But I have time. I have time. I think, God knows what, I don't know. But I think of things. And so this sermon was triggered by a therapist who was Catholic and a recovering person, John Bradshaw, you may have heard of him. And he was talking about growing up and being Catholic. And, that you have to look out for the saints. Because all the people in your family, or even, you just have to, because there's another side that you're not hearing about. And so he got in trouble for talking about that, which is interesting, with his own family. It was like, he was trying to help people, and so he was sharing his family's dysfunction, but the family they said, well, we have a right too to ask you not to put our dysfunctions on display. I don't know how they resolved it, but he talked about, he was raised with a very racist grandfather, and so, and he didn't know how to articulate that. He just knew it didn't feel right when he was younger, and and it was conflicting. They would say what a wonderful man he was, and he also had an alcohol problem, and his grandfather would be sleeping on the floor, and he'd ask why, and they would say, well, he's got a bad back, or why does he use all these epithets when talking about people? And they would say, well, he's a saint. When Stalin died, he prayed the rosary. So, he's getting these conflicting images. And so what stuck with me was that about virtue and how the Greeks and Romans, and I agree with them that you want to have virtues, but you also have to not be fooled by virtues, because all that glitters ain't gold, as they say. And so we've all heard about or read about in our lifetimes about the 7 deadly sins. And the virtues that go along with those sins. And for those of you who need a reminder, the 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, anger, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, also referred to as laziness. I am familiar with all of these, and I try to practice them from time to time. But the other voice says, well, Michael, you've got to dial it back. So to combat those sins are the character traits of humility, which is the opposite of pride, of kindness, which is the opposite of envy, abstinence, tough. But that's the opposite of gluttony, chastity, lust, patience, anger. Liberality, or giving freely, is the opposite of greed, and diligence. Anger is an interesting one. Regarding anger, Aristotle wrote about 2,000 years ago in his classic work, The Art of Rhetoric, that anybody can become angry. That's a really easy thing to do. He says, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, with the right person, and for the right purpose, in the right way. Now that is what you want to strive for. He says that otherwise anybody can just become angry. The ancient Greeks thought that virtue was an excellent character trait. For it was the quest, and I like that word, the quest. It's a journey. It's the quest for living a life of high moral character. It's just something you shoot for. You aim for the moon, you hit a star. If you aim at nothing, you wind up hitting nothing dead on the head. But Bill Shakespeare reminds us that virtue itself becomes vice when it's, good to see you, when it's misapplied. In other words, the more elevated the virtue, the more deadly it becomes. The philosophical virtues were given us by Plato, And the theological virtues were given us by Pope Gregory the Great in the 6th century CE. So you see, I have nothing else to do. I mean, you pay me to write these things, but really, I would think of these things anyway. Until recently, when the roof started to cave in on the American economy, despite us being told otherwise, it is an election year. Economists were fond of pointing out that a rising tide raises all boats. But as the gap between rich and poor grows, which it has, you can look it up, every year since 1980, it becomes clear that the rising tide that they're talking about has lifted up yachts and battleships. But if you are in the rowboat, you're getting swamped. And we hear this information, and we want to trust that what we're hearing is true, but all the time it really isn't. And so we are all inside traders in truth. At one time or another, we have all successfully rationalized selling our souls for profit. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. And so no one, we're human beings. No one is more sincere, though, than the virtuous sinner. There is no shortage of lofty ends to justify whatever means we may choose to elevate our crimes to the status of nobility. We can agree on that. But we have to remember that any virtue carried to its extreme becomes a vice, and it's very serious. What's good for the goose is also bad for the goose, and it may be devastating to the flock. If you are one of those folks who believe in evil, you probably come to recognize that evil is not the privation of good, it is the perversion of good. That is why our virtues are so dangerous, both collectively and individually. Don't let those virtues fool you. All that glitters is not gold, and any quality or virtue can be distorted and become what many people would call evil. This is true of all virtues, even temperance. You can die from too little cholesterol. An illustration is in order. Adolf Hitler, extreme, but walk with me, was a teetotaler and a vegetarian. He also loved his German shepherd, Blondie. Unlike South Dakota Republican VP contender Kristi Noem, who self-sabotaged her political career by admitting in her new book to killing her dog Cricket with a gun, as well as a goat, and 3 horses. She's also threatened to kill President Biden's German shepherd commander. Anyway, that's another sermon for another time. But his being an infrequent drinker and vegetarian helped to keep what was left of his mind pure and his mind and body pure. Because Hitler was devoted to what? To purity. This same devotion, tragically and wildly misunderstood and obviously misapplied, led him to commit genocide. You see, sometimes the enemy is as evil as our representations make he or she out to be. As a sponsor of the Holocaust, as a case study in evil disguised as good, because in his mind he thought he was doing a good thing. Here was a man so mentally and emotionally disturbed. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But here's another perspective. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. points out that there were some other things we could learn from Hitler about ourselves. He says this was very bad for us. He's talking about the whole thing. He said, But our enemies were so awful and so evil that by contrast, we must be so remarkably pure. And the true illusion of purity to which we were entitled has become our curse today. In the age of terrorism, we must remain especially alert to this temptation because our enemies are evil. We are against our enemies. Therefore, we're remarkably pure. The Bible defines religion in very few places, but the prophet Micah's definition is the most inclusive one I could find. The Lord, and you could put universe force or nothing there, requires, according to Micah, only that you do justice, you love mercy, and you walk humbly with your God. I always love that, especially in the Bible, because it's not everybody's God, whatever you consider God to be. That's in any translation, Aramaic, Greek, Hebrew. When the first two requirements are in conflict, the third one becomes essential. By Micah's definition, when influenced by pride and not humility, ethics based on God's justice or God's love is not showing respect or reverence. It attempts to mask the crime against the very virtue that it pronounces itself to be. For instance, love of one's country or ideology often expresses itself in fear of another, a fear of another country. And fear leads to hate, or to the dark side, as Yoda puts it in Star Wars. But, we quote everybody here. Micah, pop culture, it doesn't matter. Wherever we get wisdom, I'm looking for it. So Yoda says it leads to the dark side. Even if the system we oppose is hateful, actions instructed by fear are likely to resonate more with a hateful system of government than a more loving one. And with an eye for an eye, with this retributive justice, it leads everybody blind. And so we both fall into the ditch, as the teacher Jesus says. So think of the power, for instance, that comes with our new technologies. We talked about AI a couple times in the last few months. Nothing wrong with AI, it's our intentions behind it. Today we possess, as a species, the power of creation, which molecular cloning, we do that. We can do that. We're still doing it. It didn't stop with Dolly the sheep. And the powers of destruction, because we can split the atom. From Genesis to Revelation, from the Alpha of creation to the Omega of apocalypse, the domain of creation itself now we hold in our hands. It's kind of scary. We have become like the gods. Yet with more knowledge than wisdom, we as a species may not be able to handle this power, and there will surely be hell to pay. Let's look at the story of Prometheus and Faust. You probably haven't read those since high school. In the tale of Prometheus, Zeus made humankind out of clay, just like in Genesis. We were created a little higher than the beasts of the field, lacking all the knowledge and lacking all knowledge of heavenly secrets. Possessing only the most primitive of tools, we pose no threat to the gods. But then Prometheus, who was a hybrid or demigod, he had a human parent and one of his parents was a god. He stole fire from heaven and he brought it to human beings because he had a soft spot for creation. And so he empowered us with the technology to lift us to a more evolved level. Zeus punished Prometheus by chaining him to a mountain where an eagle fed daily on his liver, which was restored each night. Yet with the gift of fire and other godlike powers brought down from Mount Olympus, Prometheus succeeded in liberating human beings from the bondage of Zeus. Now you will find this in the Mesopotamian text, in Sumeria, and Genesis is a copy of that. So let's contrast this story with the one of Dr. Faustus, a 16th century German magician who is said to have sold his soul to the devil in exchange of knowledge and power, for knowledge and power. And at the beginning, people thought Faustus was a fool. But over the centuries, as we became more clever and enlightened as human beings, this perspective has changed. Throughout the age of so-called reason, as faith in science and tech grew, people began to kind of see this story in another light. During the 19th century, Faust became somewhat of a hero. Wolfgang von Goethe rewrote the Faust legend with a happy ending. So human genius and power prove stronger than the devil. So Faustus wins his wager and he is saved. But then comes along the 20th century. 2 world wars, another Holocaust, and then the atomic bomb. Prometheus and Faust both seek powers denied to human beings, and they both suffer as a result. However, Prometheus' suffering has meaning. Faust's does not. Dr. Faust sells his soul to the devil for his own selfish purposes. A modern-day Gnostic, he seeks knowledge and mastery simply for his own sake, regardless of the consequences. You see, knowledge is not wisdom. Knowledge applied can be wisdom. But there's a lot of knowledgeable fools out here walking up and down here. And it really, you know, just because, that's why I said last week, you can't get here from here. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And we have to remember that. Prometheus, on the other hand, in jeopardizing his future, he doesn't do it for himself, but explicitly to create a better future for humanity. In getting control of these powers that we have, these divine powers that embrace and enhance our status in the great interdependent web of being, each of us is playing with fire. Faust, the fire of hell, which incinerates, and Prometheus, the fire of heaven, which purifies. The Universalist theologian Origen wrote that this fire consumes not the creature, but what the creature has built, as sort of a purgatory, if you will. It burns away transgressions and it keeps the good works unharmed. When Aeschylus wrote Prometheus Bound, and when Marlowe wrote Dr. Faustus, our world was divided into the heavens above and the earth below. At that time, we believed we were the center of the universe. We believed that we were the center of God's attention, yet always in danger of being separated from this God by thinking much too highly of ourselves. That's called hubris, arrogance. 2 major shifts altered our perspective. First of all, we were no longer the center of the universe. Not only does the sun not revolve around the earth, but even the sun itself, we discover now, is just a lesser star, a peripheral star. The other shift is that even as we recognize ourselves to have receded a bit in cosmic importance, we continue to use and to struggle with our human powers that once were considered only the power of the gods. Creation and apocalypse are now left in our hands. Given the knowledge of good and evil, if like Faustus, we continue to use that knowledge for selfish, short-sighted, and narrow purposes, and then to continue to call it virtue, our hubris will lead us to an extinction level event. We may have one anyway. At least Plato tells us every 5,000 years there's a pole shift. Go back and read Plato. When I was in seminary, we got Plato, but we got handouts of Plato. When you go back and look at Timaeus, he believed in reincarnation, he believed in the gods, which were extraterrestrials, he believed, and he talks about all this, he believed in reincarnation, he believed in Atlantis, he talked about that. You gotta go back and look at Plato. And not just a handout. That's what I got in seminary. I had to go back and read it. It was very well. He talked about quantum physics, a fractalized universe, way before Einstein. He said that we can go back, you can go back far enough to a time where time doesn't, there is no time, there's a beginning. We call that the Big Bang. He said this 2,500 years before Jesus was a gleam in his mother's eye. If, like Prometheus, we share our warmth and light, then the fires we kindle will burn to bless and to keep our world lit up with beacons of hope. Once again, remembering that any virtue carried to its extreme becomes a vice. We must keep the fires burning to bless and to keep our world fit and lit up in the light of hope and caring and love and tenderness. In this way, if we decide to do this, collectively and individually, we can assist in guiding our fellow travelers through the dark of night into the potential of a new and glorious day. Let's eat. Please rise as you are willing and able, and join in singing our closing hymn, number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Hymn number 6. Wasn't here, but Ro is here, so she let's not forget the maestro. Okay, so May the love which overcomes all differences and heals all wounds and chases away all our fears and keeps us from being separated, let that love be with us all time.